That legitimately might have been one of the most frustrating games we've seen from the Detroit Lions, probably within the calendar year. Incredibly frustrating day at Ford Field. The Detroit Lions fell flat against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. The Buccaneers get their revenge. And let's be honest, it's hard to beat a team 3 times in a row in the NFL. I don't care who you are. Well, maybe not the Carolina Panthers, but that's a different story. Once again, week 2 is in the books, so I want to go over Sunday's winners and losers. There were a couple surprises that we had in there, a couple players who showed up to play against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and there was also a couple players and coaches that were definitely not prepared to play against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So let's get into it. First off, we have Aiden Hutchinson, who had himself a day. My man went off for 4.5 sacks, 5 pressures, 1 forced fumble. He had a field day against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers offensive line. Granted, once again, he's going up against a backup tackle on the outside, but still, you want your playmakers to take advantage of those mismatches, to show up when the lights are the brightest, and if they're going up against lesser competition, that's when you want them to excel. Aiden Hutchinson had another dominant day in week 2. He's already up to, I think, 6 sacks on the year. He is legitimately a one-man wrecking crew. I hope he can continue this pace, throw in a couple interceptions, and we seriously have to consider him for Defensive Player of the Year if he keeps this pace up. Get those prop bets in now before everything spikes to the roof for Defensive Player of the Year, because it could be a sneaky call out on him winning that Defensive Player of the Year. Up next, we have to give kudos to the Detroit Lions run defense. DJ Reader is here, he's home, and he made his impact felt against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. As a whole, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers were only able to rush for 70 yards. Half of those rushing yards came from Baker Mayfield, who had 34 yards on the ground, and the rest of the offense was held in check. In addition to having a great day on the run defense, I feel like the defense played very well overall. I think you're a casual if you don't think that they did. They had a fantastic day shutting down Baker Mayfield and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers offense. Kept them to around 200 yards of total offense, kept them to 20 points overall. They had a really good day. You know, the offense didn't hold up its end of the bargain. We'll get into that a little bit later. But I think this defense is really showing up and showing out. And Aaron Glenn is starting to show, like, all right, we can get home with 4. We can sit back, let the offense come to us, and attack and make plays when we need to. And I think they did a tremendous job overall. Granted, we had some trouble with containing Baker, and he got loose on a couple plays where he should have been sacked. Has me a little bit nervous for next week and going up against Arizona. We know traditionally how hard the Detroit Lions have struggled against mobile quarterbacks. So hopefully we have everything in check by next week Sunday, because Kyler will burn us on the ground. But overall, I think it was a great day on the defensive side of the ball. Aaron Glenn and crew, you get a gold star. You did a fantastic job holding Tampa Bay in check. Granted, some people did have a pretty good day. Chris Godwin, killer day. Terry and Arnold, that's a tough matchup, man. It's a rookie in game number 2 in the NFL. You're jumping up to the big leagues. So I think he had another steep learning curve. Hopefully, it might be a little bit easier test next week going out to the desert. You only have Marvin Harrison Jr. out there, and I don't even know who the number 2 is yet, quite honestly. Haven't even begun to look into the tape against the Arizona Cardinals. So I think that gives a good opportunity for our secondary to right the ship, and then hopefully we can continue to progress and keep these teams in check on the defensive side of the ball. Up next, Waymo Jamo. Man, he's really solidifying himself as that number 2 wide receiver. We did have some concern about can he take that next step? Can he be that reliable wide receiver for Jared Goff? And he continues to prove that he can. He had that deep pass from Jared Goff at the beginning of the game, which was fantastic. I love them stretching the field and kind of pushing up against the opponent's secondary. But then there's a lot of crossing routes that he had where once you get him into space, if Ben Johnson does his job properly, you get him into space, you can get those yards after the catch and have a phenomenal day. But overall, I think JMO is growing into that role to be that reliable number 2. And we'll see if we have to put more on his plate. Amon-Ra St. Brown has a contusion. He's getting beat up a little bit, so they might pull back his role. And, can JMO step up into that on a consistent basis? I still think that's a question that we have to answer. Now onto the losers. At the top, unfortunately, we have Jared Goff. Just for whatever reason, it wasn't his day. He threw 2 picks. One was debatable if it was his fault or not. There was a questionable holding on the Tampa Bay Buccaneers secondary that was not called, and it probably should have been, given that the refs called the Lions on it in the previous drive. And then you also had the interception where he just lobbed it as he was getting pushed to the ground. Very ill-advised throw, throwing it into essentially no man's land with 3 Tampa Bay defenders right there to pick the ball off. Very stupid play. It's not what we expect from Jared Goff. But again, kind of shows if he has that pressure in his face, he's going to make some stupid plays. And that was the case on that second interception. So, it wasn't a great day for Jared. He threw for 55 times. And I don't understand what we're doing as an offense. We have 2 very capable, very well-rounded running backs against a depleted Tampa Bay front, and we're throwing the ball 55 times. Ben Johnson, I think he was just super stubborn. He saw something he liked on tape against Tampa Bay with their secondary this week, and he just wanted to exploit it come hell or high water. But he never adapted. He never changed the game plan. So with that said, I think that parlays right into our second loser of the day, and that was Ben Johnson and the Detroit Lions coaching staff on the offensive side of the ball. I think defensively we did pretty well. Offensively, and from a head coach perspective, I think we had a lot of fruit left on the vine that we could have taken advantage of and that we didn't. For whatever reason, Ben Johnson was hell-bent on throwing screen passes, throwing the ball, and abandoning the run game. And I'm not quite sure why he did it. The run game was there, it was open, and we just never took advantage of it. We wanted to put this game on Jared Goff, and it just did not work out. But you have to adapt as an offensive play caller. Once you have Vita Vea go out, there's short Kaiser Kansey. You have these opportunities to establish the run with your offensive line, with these great backs, and you never did it. And even at the end of the game as well, I feel like there was some suspect play calling that we should have taken advantage of, and we never did. And Dan Campbell, you made some great decisions, the past couple of years as head coach of the Detroit Lions. All the fourth downs, the big cojones of going for it. That end of half sequence of sending out the field goal unit as Jared Goff was spiking the ball sucked. If we had those 3 points, if we had that field goal at the end of the half, we could have won this game with a walk-off field goal. Jake Bates, put him in, let him do what he does at Ford Field, and we could have won this game. But unfortunately, that's not how the house of cards fell this time, and we came up a little bit short. So it sucks to see that, a couple small tweaks, small decisions could have really changed the flow of this game. This team is almost there. Once we clean up, the little bit of rust, the little bit of decision making, I think they're going to be unstoppable. Once they get the flow of things, we think of Chicken Little, the sky is falling. That's not the case. This team is very, very close to completing everything, putting everything together, and taking that next step as a contender. And I think if they do, they're going to be extremely dangerous come December and January. But right now, we're just knocking off the rust. So with that said, I'm still super high in this team. I think this was one of those games where the opponent came in just a little bit hungrier, wanting to beat our ass in our home stadium because we got them twice last year, and they wanted it more, plain and simple. But we need to take this one on the chin. We need to learn from it. We need to grow from it. And we have a big game going into Arizona where it's a very prolific offense right now. Kyler is dealing right now. Marvin Harrison Jr. found his swag this past week. And we have to make sure that we contain this offense and that we impose our will onto their defense. So overall, it was a tough loss. It was a very frustrating loss for the Detroit Lions, but there was a lot of good takeaways that I think we can pull from this game to make us better in the long run. So with that being said, let's go Lions.